So they're supposed to have 1,500 foot-pounds of torque on the Jesus nut, right? So when they start checking them, they found out that one of them had 50 pounds of torque on the head. And another one had 0 pounds of torque on the head. So, yeah. And this knucklehead commanding officer, and I'll never forgive him to this day, he's dead though, had us fly those aircraft off. So that was something.
Okay, so we're, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared were you?
10.
Yeah, okay. Now, when did
the damn thing could come unglued? It killed Fort.
And you have no choice. You have to do this because it's his order.
Yeah. He is the CO, and we had to fly the damn birds off.
Most of us never learned how to train our brains, which is why most of us needlessly settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. My name is Chris Doris, and I want to make brain training mainstream. This is my series, Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm interviewing badasses from all walks of life on what mental toughness means to them and their unique approaches to strengthening their minds. Hey guys, welcome back to Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm your host, Chris Doris. And today we have a fascinating guest. His name is Al Zygowicz, U.S. Marine Corps Major Al Zygowicz, helicopter pilot, served in the Marine Corps from 1969 to 1974 and flew missions off of the USS Tripoli in Vietnam in 1972. After his service, then he became a special agent in the Secret Service for 25 years, from 1976 to 2001. He's also an expert martial artist. The dude is a bona fide badass. I've known him for 25 years. And every time I hear him tell stories, I'm simultaneously entertained and also I learn. But here's the deal. He's a phenomenal storyteller, okay? And he has fascinating stories, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? As a veteran and as a Secret Serviceman. Everything that I've ever known about him has included or being characterized by mental toughness. But it's going to be our job. And I know this because I've known the guy for a quarter of a century. I know how he rolls. He's going to tell us great stories. We're going to be very entertained. But we're going to have to do a little bit of work, right, to glean, right, to extract from his stories the nugget of mental toughness gold that I can assure you will be embedded within them. So enjoy the conversation and we'll talk afterwards. All right, where is he? Where are you, Al? There he is. There he is. Major Alan Zygowicz. What's up, man?
Hello.
I'm so happy to finally, I said this in the introduction, you know, we've known each other now for almost 25 years.
Holy cow.
I know, man. I think I met you I did meet you in either 94 or 95 in Hawaii. I wore one of my Aloha shirts for you, by the way. Yeah, so we've known each other for quite a while. I told folks a bit about you in the introduction, and you and I have been talking about having you on for a while, and we finally made the timing work. So thanks so much for joining us.
Magic.
You know, my whole knowledge of you for the duration of our relationship, your whole life has been, as far as I know, in the service, right? As a major in the Marine, as a helicopter pilot, also serving in Vietnam, and then since then serving in the Secret Service. So my suspicion is, and this is not a suspicion because I've known you, I've heard so many of the some of the stories, and I love the way you tell stories. That you have a lot of stories. My suspicion, right, is that you have a whole bunch of stories, you know, that have required toughness, right? Mental toughness. Can you take us back, you know, to when you were in the service, when you were a helicopter pilot?
All right.
Can you share something with the audience that, you know, and like, you know, let me just preface it by saying, you know, my mission, as you and I have discussed, that my whole point in doing Tough Talks in the first place, right, is in service. It really is in service. I want to help people because my belief is that we, by virtue of the lack of our formal education on how to strengthen the way that we use our minds, People unnecessarily settle, struggle, or worse, suffer. So in asking you to share stories, any stories that you're comfortable sharing, of course, it's not, although I know that the way you tell stories has great entertainment value, that is not the reason that I'm asking you to share stories is entertainment. It's in service to people, to have them hear, what your experience has been like and to learn from that.
Well, I guess Vietnam was interesting. I went there reluctantly. After flight school, I went to California, where I transitioned from Huey's, which was you flew in a training, to a 46, and that's what I flew in Vietnam. You know what a 46 is?
No, but I've seen the picture.
I got a model if you want to see it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's painted exactly like the ones we flew, including the tail number in Vietnam.
This is how it's going to be, folks. So good. Love this guy.
So here it is. And you see,
wow, that's exactly how it was painted, huh?
Yeah. It's like they call it a baby Chinook. It's made by Boeing. And two pilots, crew chief, and we had door gunners too when we flew in combat.
And what would be inside that?
Well, you carry. When I was there in 1972. Yeah. And interesting story how I got there. So, as I say, I started off in California, where I transitioned into the 46, and the war was grinding down in Vietnam. They were pulling the Marines out. They had pulled all the Marines out. And so our mission at the time, what they told me when I went over there, was that I would go to Okinawa for 6 months, and then I would go on a LPH, landing platform helicopter, to carrier that carries helicopters. And I would be on there for 6 months, and then I would go home. So there was no Vietnam. And so, hey, throw me in that briar patch, because I was not interested in going to Vietnam. Let me tell you that right now. I wanted to fly all my life. That's why I was flying. Right. But Vietnam was like, maybe we'll pass on this. And they were pulling out. All the politicians, they didn't want to know from Vietnam. They were pulling out. They had pulled the Marines out. So I got into the squadron, HMM, Helicopter Marine Medium, 165. I got in that in January of 72. And I went over to Okinawa. And I was in Okinawa flying 46s for about a week. And then they said to me, oh, by the way, you're going on the float now. I said, okay. So they said, well, why? I asked them, how come? Well, what happened was the carrier was coming to Okinawa, and they had just lost 2 aircraft in the Indian Ocean, and nobody knew why. So they needed replacement pilots. And so they said, oh, by the way, you are a replacement pilot. Nice. So I got on board.
When you say, Al, they they lost 2 aircraft, were they helicopters?
Yeah, they lost 2 helicopters in the ocean. What happened is one helicopter went out they were just flying around the Indian Ocean, and lost contact. So they sent another aircraft out to look for it, and that aircraft was also lost.
Wow.
So 2 flight crews, they didn't know what happened. So we got on board, me and a couple other officers, we got on board as replacements for these crews that were lost. They did not find out what happened to the aircraft until another one crashed in Santa Ana, California. And the problem was that there was a gear on the aft head. The helicopters were being reworked by Kawasaki in Japan. Well, there was supposed to be so much torque on this one nut that we call the Jesus nut, and it holds everything in. and if it comes loose, you see Jesus. So anyhow, the Jesus nut was not properly torqued, and as a consequence, and safety wire. And so what happened was they lost these aircraft because the nut came loose and the blades intermeshed. And
Holy crap!
that was all she wrote. So got on
And this
board.
is the same exact aircraft that you're flying?
Yeah. So we got
The
on board.
46.
Yeah, and when we found this out, the Marine Corps grounded all the aircraft. So our next orders were to go sail into Subic Bay in the Philippines and have the birds craned off where they would fix them, you know. So, but you had to go to a facility where they had the ability to fix them. We couldn't fix them on the ship. We could do a lot of things on the ship: change blades, change engines, do all kind of stuff. But that was a major operation. So, so here's what happened. So we sail into Subic Bay, and the CEO, commanding officer, says, "We're not going to crane them off. We're going to fly them off." What? So I didn't want to fly them off because the nuts were like bad juju, yeah?
Right.
So anyhow, he had us fly the damn aircraft off into Subic Bay to get fixed. Mr. Zygowicz wrote a letter home.
Question.
His wife, if I die, I want you to sue this jerk.
Oh my God.
And the entire Marine Corps because, you know, what the situation was. So listen.
How far did you have to fly? How far was this the Tripoli or whatever was carrier?
Yeah, it was on a Tripoli. And
okay. How far was the flight from the boat to wherever the hell they were getting fixed?
I don't know, 20 miles.
Oh, that's like, okay, so that's a flight.
Yeah. So anyhow.
Wait, hold on. Another question. If they were using the crane, where was the crane going to put them?
Well, the crane was going to crane them off, as cranes do, and put them on the deck, and then they would haul them off to the, facility to be fixed.
Onto the deck of the boat.
They would train them off of the ship onto the ground, and then pull them off and then fix them. So listen to this.
Okay.
So they're supposed to have 1,500 foot-pounds of torque on the Jesus nut, right? So when they start checking them, they found out that one of them had 50 pounds of torque on the head. And another one had 0 pounds of torque on the head. So, yeah. And this knucklehead, commanding officer, and I'll never forgive him to this day, he's dead though, had us fly those aircraft off. So that was something.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared were you?
10.
Yeah, okay. Now, when did
the damn thing could come unglued? It killed Fort.
And you have no choice. You have to do this because it's his order.
Yeah. He is the CO, and we had to fly the damn birds off.
So while you're a couple of things. One, did you know in advance which were the aircraft that had the 50 or the 0?
No, we didn't know. In order to check them, they had to crane them off, take them, go to the fix-it facility, and then they would check the head. So nobody knew.
So you might have flown the 0 torque one.
Yeah, I didn't know. All I said was
there's no way for you to know any of that. So this is like Russian roulette.
Yeah, I know. It was exactly. I never thought of that, but it was like Russian roulette because it was a knucklehead CO we had.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what did you? So here you are. You're starting it up. You're thinking to yourself, okay, this could be it. The rotors are going. They could go. You have nuclear. You're like, here we go.
Yeah. It wasn't a good thought.
Well, what did you do with that? Now, see, that's the part of the story that I'm most interested in right now. Okay. So you have no choice, right? Because a lot of all this mental toughness stuff is about like exercising what you do choose, right? What you do have control over. You did not have any control unless you were like willing to.
No.
And
that was at the time I'm a captain, right?
Right.
And all the guys flying were captains, lieutenants, and
so like you would have been discharged.
But the fly we fly.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's not the
Nothing I
choice.
could say to this knucklehead to say, "Oh, don't fly," because
Right.
what are you, Captain Zygo? I'll take a hike. You know?
So you get in, you start it up, and do
Yeah.
you pray?
Throw caution to the
Are you a
wind.
man of prayer?
That's another interesting point. And I don't know if you want to get into that now, but that is an
Why not?
interesting point.
Okay, let's go.
You want to go?
Yeah.
So anyhow, not in this particular flight, but some flights in Vietnam where you're getting shot up. It's always like you didn't know from 1 second to the next if you were going to live. It was that way. I mean, we go into this zone. This is another story. So we go into this zone, loaded up with South Vietnamese soldiers who, because the Marines were out. So we're flying these South Vietnamese Marines around. And they had this new thing that came out, and this is why I'll never forgive the goddamn Russians, called an SA-7 missile, SAM, surface to air missile, that was a hand, like a hand-fired missile. So when I was in California, the way they taught us tactics was you would go up 3,000 feet and you would spiral down into the zone. Yeah. So the guy couldn't be shooting at you. Well, cannot do it because the new SAM missile will kill you if you try to spiral from a high altitude. However, it needs 50 feet. You have to be above 50 feet altitude in order for it to lock on. So the new tactics were that you would fly in at like treetop level and fast. You go fast, treetop level, go in, below the tree, drop in, and go into the zone fast, and then flare, big time flare, put it down and get the guy down. However, going into the zone and coming out of the zone, you would get riddled by small arms. The missile wasn't going to get you because you're too low. It did get one friend of mine because he's a 53, different story. So the missile wouldn't get you, but consequently, the things called bullets would get you. And so they got you. I mean, they did a hell of a job on my aircraft. The guys in the back, the troops, were creamed. I mean, because it's, aluminum skin, titanium, and the bullets go right through it. It sounds like hail, like if you're ever in a car and you hear hail coming in and you see, it sounds exactly like hail. So going in, I mean, these guys got riddled. And then we sit in the zone, and unbeknownst to us, this is another fiasco. We landed on top of a North Vietnamese regiment, and we were going in, and there were tanks in the zone. So the tanks, these things with the big guns on them, they swivel around you. So going to the zone, we're getting killed, and we had the Army Cobras. I love these guys, and I have these meetings I go to all the time. I mean, now because it's Corona bullshit, they cancel these meetings, and I know these guys now because I met them.
Yeah.
At these meetings because they're Army guys flying these Cobras.
You're talking about reunions, right? You told me about that when we had lunch.
Yeah, reunions.
Yeah.
So anyhow, these Cobras are on either side of us, and they're shooting the shit out of this place while they're coming in. So then there's a tank over on the port side, and I see the tank. So this Cobra on the starboard side breaks in front of my nose, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm gonna have a meteor. He breaks in front of my nose, and he's shooting at this damn tank going down the street, going to the zone. This is a bad thing. So go into the zone, and we're sitting there getting the guys who were alive off. Most of them were not. And while we're sitting there, take a bullet, hits my armored seat, which were invented by the good Lord, and that blows up my radios. And then we get...
Did you say it blew up your radios?
Radios, the things you talk to other guys on. So the only thing we had was FM, Fox Mike, so we could talk to other birds, but we couldn't talk to the ship. So we had to call the other birds and, all that. So anyhow, we're in the zone. They blow up my radios, and they blow up the hydraulics. We have 2 hydraulic systems, and they shot one out. And the manual says, "Yea, ye who loseth one hydraulic system, thou shalt put thine helicopter down, because 50-50, the other one's going to go." And there's no linkage between your controls and the heads, right? It's all done through hydraulics, and if you wouldn't have the muscles to move these stupid heads anyhow. So NATOP says, put her down. We also had 1 generator shot out, and the crew chief tells me that my number 1 engine's on fire, which it was not. It was not. It was just one of these tracer rounds, and it's lodged in the engine, and it's going, doing all that shit.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I'm not pulling this stupid engine offline because the gauges are still good. And so I did not. So as I say, NATOP's Naval Aviation Training and Operations Manual says you put the bird down. However, briefing says that if you guys go down in the zone, you are going to be POW.
Wow.
Okay. So the choice is, the choice is be POW or fly this thing back to the ship, knowing that, this thing might not hold together. So because I was flying, nobody else had a vote. Me and Merlin were flying. Merlin Harkemeyer, great guy. And so I'm pulling all the switches and doing all the gauges and doing all the commo, and he's flying the bird. So we fly back to the carrier and land. Of course, we had to declare emergency, but we couldn't talk to them, so we Fox Mike another bird in the stick and said, "Hey, you got to get this clearance for landing." So they cleared it. So they cleared it. So we landed the spot. It is over, thank God. And then this buddy of mine, Steve Walsh, he's flying, and he lost a stub wing. He lost a wheel off his stub wing. What am I talking about? That's
not only store hour, but it's also show and tell.
Yeah, you see this?
Yeah.
He landed on a dike out there. Oh, in the briefing they said, do not land on dike or you'll get your wheel knocked off. He lands on dike, gets his wheel knocked off. So he's coming in, and he's in the spot in front of me. So we're shutting down, rotor blade or rotor brakes on, and he's landing in front of me without a wheel. Now, you have to have 2 wheels in the back, or the helicopter is this. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So what the Navy did was they got one of these pieces of yellow gear. What's yellow gear? It's a thing that drags your aircraft around the deck. It's a little like machine that you ride on and pulls your helicopter.
Okay.
And they got this piece of yellow gear, and they put on it a what the hell did they put on it? A life raft. They put a life raft on the thing so that he could land, and the sponson goes on the thing, and the thing stays semi-level, right?
Right. Like a jack.
Yeah. So anyhow, he's coming in, and he was having issues. And what I see, I'm sitting in the bird in the seat, and I see this rotor blade from his aft head coming like right by my windscreen. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, we survived this. Now Steve is going to kill me by putting his rotor blade through my head.
Oh my God.
Oh man, I was like, holy shit. So
wait, why couldn't you move?
I was dead. I was on the deck. They chained me down, and the rotors were off, and the engines were pulled back. I couldn't get off. I had to stay there. I mean, it would take me a whole bunch of time to wind up and go. So, and besides, the aircraft shouldn't have flown anyhow. I didn't have but one hydraulic system and no generator. So anyhow, he finally lands, thank goodness. And then the Navy gets pissed off because we crushed their damn life raft.
How dare you?
And they get pissed off at us. because the life raft is.
You obviously panicked. So I want to focus on this story. There's several clarification questions, but I really want to focus on the elements of fear. Okay, right? On the moments where, because this is such a unique situation. Like you have to do what you said at the beginning of all this, is that you don't know if you're going to be alive in the next second or not.
Right.
Right. So you had a decision to make. You know, do we fly this thing with one hydraulic system down or not? But while you're making that decision, you were getting shot at.
Yeah.
So so you could get shot and killed, and then obviously the decision's moot. So you're trying to make a decision, right? You're being shot at.
Right.
And were you able, in retrospect, if you can even remember this, did you have any calmness during those moments when you had to make decisions like that?
I was I was too busy.
Oh,
I was too busy. I had gauges to watch. I had, all engines that were, like circuit breakers to put. I had too much going on. Communication with the other guys, because Merlin was flying. I had too much going on. So
were you panicking?
No, training took over.
That's amazing. That's really fascinating. So you weren't calm, but nor were you panicked because of your training.
Right.
So your training took over. Talk to me about your training.
Well, we went through emergency procedures. We practiced them, and what happens if this doesn't. You're just going through the motions of, okay, these are the emergency procedures that I have to do. This is the commo that I have to do. And the other thing is, I got not only me, Merlin and I are flying, but I got a bunch of the guys in the back I got to take care of. They're depending on me. There's no jumping out. I mean, we didn't have parachutes because, it's bad on the morale for the people in the back if you jump out of the aircraft.
Only you.
so anyhow, but it was like, okay, we're still flying. There was no panic. There was apprehension, but there was no panic. Another story. So this buddy of mine, he was instructor. After this, I was an instructor in Pensacola. And he would be flying some of these Middle Eastern guys, teaching Middle Eastern guys to fly, the Muslim guy. And then, some of the things that you have to do is you have to get the aircraft in unusual attitudes, and you have to have the student recovering. So
when you say an unusual attitude, what does that actually mean?
And all of a sudden you're a wing over and your power's off, and you're in a spin going down. So
okay.
How do you?
Okay.
And so, but you had to. So he's flying with this one Muslim guy, and the guy goes, "It's Allah's will. It's Allah's will. We're going to die." No, it ain't Allah's will. We can fly.
So he went into panic.
So that's what got me thinking about that particular episode. But
But back to the training though, because that's an important piece of as far as a possible takeaway for people that are watching or listening to this is no, we're not talking about. You said training took over.
Right.
Yeah.
I was doing what I was taught to do, and that was taking up most of my thought process.
Thank God.
Huh?
Thank God.
Well, that's another story. I can get into that if you want. Remember, we talked about that before.
Well, what I mean is it was a damn good thing that you had the training, right? Right? The training is contingency training. If this happens, this is how you respond. If this happens, this is how you respond. And you probably didn't do your training. Probably wasn't one repetition.
No, I mean we're too busy doing shit.
Well, how much training did you have?
Well, let's see. Flight school was a year, and then after that transition into the 46 was another year.
So you're basically getting the equivalent of a graduate degree.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and interesting about flight school, my name starts with a Z, Zygo, right? So you sit in the back, and all these guys are in front of you, and you like hide in the back, right? When you're in flight school, ain't no hiding in the back. Your teacher's sitting right next to you. And so if you intercourse up, he's there to tell you that you did it, and you better know what to do. You better know your emergency procedures. You better know all this shit because your instructor's right there. So different from being Mr.
So when you were going in 1972, when you're going into Vietnam, and you were going to bring these Marines out, that was the whole point of the whole mission, right?
Well, actually, to land them in the zone.
And you kept saying that's the demilitarized zone.
No. It was in I Corps, which is the top corps, DMZ, I Corps, 2 Corps, and so the Marines operated up there in I Corps, and our mission was the reason I was in Vietnam is, well, the first time when we got on the aircraft carrier, the first month or two after they fixed the aircraft, we sailed around to different ports doing goodwill stuff. So we went to Hong Kong, we went to Taiwan, where else? I don't know. We went to a couple of ports, and it was just like a goodwill thing. And then they had this thing called Lam Sam 71. And what that was is it was a big offensive by the North, and they moved into the South. And so they diverted us from our good times to Vietnam to fight this stupid war. So that's what I did from like about March on through into December of 72.
Oh, wow. March, April, May. Wow. That's almost the whole year. And how many days a week were you flying into danger?
It was off and on, because of our mission. It wasn't a daily thing. So it was off and on. Sometimes we'd do a feint, we'd like, ooh, we're going to land here. And then, we're not going to land here. We'd fly out. But they would still shoot at you. And then we would, just.
What was the point of that?
To pretend like we were going in, and then the army or somebody was going to maneuver in from a different area and fake them out.
I see.
Yeah.
As a pilot, during that period of time where every time you'd fly in, you knew you were going to get shot at and potentially die, did you feel like an expert pilot?
We all thought we were pretty damn good. You had so much time in the aircraft. You figure you were had a lot of attitude that you were. All the pilots that I knew were like that. Everybody thought they were great. Yeah.
Good. That's what I would hear.
You spent so much time in the aircraft, you knew it, and you knew how it would react in different situations. And everybody thought they were pretty damn good. Like, even when I was an instructor in Pensacola, we could do things with that aircraft. I was flying Hueys then. And I thought it was pretty damn good. As I say, all the instructors did. You just got used to it. It's like, riding a bike. You ride a bike and a bike and a bike and a bike. You get good at riding a bike. Except now I go up these hills.
Right, yeah. But but if you're riding a bike on a cliff, on a path, it's like that wide.
I don't do that.
I'm just saying, there's crazy trails up in Utah or anywhere in the world, right? Then no matter how good you are, there is great opportunity for you to shift away from acknowledging your expertise and shift your attention into what could go wrong.
Well,
okay?
Chris, it was something we dealt with every time we picked up an aircraft and flew it. There's so many stupid moving parts that every time you took that bird off, something could go wrong that would cause it to crash. Like the 46s, before they had this head problem, they were breaking in half. And they had found out what caused them to break in half. When I was in Pensacola flying the Hueys, we lost a couple of birds because the rotor blade came off. And so we found out there was a problem with the rotor blade. When I was flying Cobras in Atlanta, in the reserves, I was flying Cobras, and these were birds that were used in Vietnam, G model, single engine, and they had been heavy hauled around. We were having all kind of problems with them. I get in one one day. We're going to fly down to Pensacola on a cross country. So start it up and take off, and the force trim wasn't working.
What?
So force technical. You have these buttons on the thing cyclic, which moves the head on it. And it was not working, so I couldn't, it giving me back pressure here, so I couldn't like stop it and leave it and stop it. So brought that down the bird. So they said, climb into this other bird. So climb into another bird and start it up, get start. Okay, hot start. So had to down that one, climb into another aircraft. Now there's number 3. Okay, this one works. No, I'm sorry. The one that got the hot start, they did not have another bird. So we went home. We didn't fly it. So the next day, I'm driving around with my wife, and I see a truck going down the highway with a Cobra on it. I said, ain't nobody flying Cobras here but my squadron. So I call up the squadron, and sure enough, the bird that we had the hot start with, they fixed the flight control, the fuel control. Some other guys got in it, took off, and had a short shaft failure and crashed. What's a short shaft? You got an engine here, and you got a transmission. And there's a shaft between them. It's called a short shaft, and to drive the transmission. Well, the short shaft broke, so the engine speeds up, and the rotor blade speeds down. And so they crashed. They both, got out of it alive. But anyhow.
Why did they? Wait. They told you not to fly that.
Well, I downed the aircraft because the first aircraft force control problem. The second aircraft had a problem with the hot start. I don't get into what that is. It had a hot start. We had
a problem. So why was anybody flying it after? Because they thought they fixed it.
Because they fixed it. It was a problem with the fuel control. So they put a new fuel control in, and the next day, another crew got in that same bird that we had the hot start in and flew it. But unfortunately, they had a short shaft there.
Yeah, so right, and they crash. And so they're all something that's a common denominator that I'm hearing loud and clear through all of your stories is that a lot of shit could go wrong all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like something tragic could go wrong always.
Yeah.
So you're living in that.
Right.
Perpetually in this state of this could all get really fucked up fast and I could die.
Yeah. I guess you could say.
Well, that's like what's going on. Is that though what's going on? Was that going on in your head? Because I imagine if it was, you might go crazy.
Right. Well, no, you know what? I like to fly. I mean, I like to fly. So
wow. So wait a minute. So your love for
look, you got to accept the dangers. Life is a bunch of dangers here, dangers there, and you just got to accept it. Okay, so I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory, I guess.
You know what? I love that though. I've actually never had this thorough of a conversation with you about all this. We just have like at dinners or whatever we'll have, and you tell the stories in a funny way, and there's a lot to these stories that's not funny at all, but you bring levity to it, and I get that. But like I get really fascinated, right, because I'm into the mind, and like how does a person you pulled off a lot of miracles. I'm sure that many that you don't even talk about in extreme threat, in a state of extreme threat.
Right.
And you're saying things like training took over. So I've been asking basically like, how the hell did you get through this shit? And you're saying things, and you're saying it very casually, but I'm hearing them, which is training took over.
Yeah.
Right. You're too busy doing shit to pay attention to the fact that there's bullets whizzing by your head.
Right.
Right. You're getting shit done. You're too busy getting shit done.
Right. I had a job to do.
You had a job to do. And I love to fly. Now, these are three amazing things, but not everybody would choose those. Did you ever have an experience with somebody who had the same training as you, but panicked? And I'm not asking you to share any story. This is a yes or no question. Like, did you have any experiences of anybody that, despite the training,
No.
So that's beautiful, right? Because so the training must have been pretty damn good. Now, before you even got your training, like, what kind of like, how did you become a pilot? Like, what did you have to do to get into that?
Well, okay. So anyhow, I'm in college, and I've always wanted to fly my whole life. And I'm in college, and I had ROTC, which is Army ROTC.
Right.
So I wanted to fly, but I knew that if I went into the Army and flew, that they would put me in helicopters and they would send me to Vietnam and I'd get my ass shot off. So what I figured I'd do is I would try, and I wanted to fly jets. So I asked the Army, I said, hey, Army, I want to fly jets. Would you guys consider me transferring my commission? And they said, yeah, but the other service that you go to has to accept your commission. I said, okay. So I go to the Air Force and I say, hey, Air Force, I'm an Army officer. Can I transfer my commission to you? And they say, no. All of our officers know about airplanes, and you know about running up and down hills and shooting guns. So you would have to start at square one, go to OCS, and resign your commission. Well, I couldn't resign my commission. So I said, well, I can't do that. So then I went to the Navy, and I said, hey, Navy, same story to the Navy. And the Navy said to me, no, all our officers know how to drive boats. You know how to run up and down hills. You don't know how to drive a boat. So you have to, so we will not accept your commission. So
I'm sure this is verbatim, right? I'm sure this is exactly how the language went down.
Yeah, it was. So then I go to the Marine Corps. So the Marine Corps got jets, yeah. So I talked to the Marine Corps guy, and he goes, let me just see here. Oh, just so happens it's your lucky day. You know, we're at the Vietnam War, right? He said, oh, you know,
yeah, lucky you.
Lucky you. You know how to run up and down hills. We just happen to have a slot open for you. I said, okay. I said, but I want to fly. They said, well, after you go through the basic school and you do all that, we'll see. So if you pass all the tests and things like that. So
was that hard?
What?
Well, you're an exceptionally smart human being. I'm saying that out loud for the audience. Was the training hard to you?
Well, the training was, I'll tell you about it. So anyhow, I transfer my commission. I go to this thing called the Basic School, TBS. And it's in Quantico, Virginia. And I get there like, I don't know, September? Yeah, September of the year. And it's a 9-month school. And what it is it teaches you how to be a platoon leader. So what it consists of, you writing these 5-paragraph orders, running up and down hills, living in the field, shooting guns, blowing shit up, and doing obstacle courses, doing compass courses, all kind of crap. You know, it wasn't anything that took a genius to do, but you know, you had to score a few points, and so I scored a few points. And so my MOS, what was my request? At flight school. So I said, okay, go to flight school. So that's what happened to me. And, but I had to go through the basic school first in order to get into flight school, and then the rest is history.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not like the reason I asked that question, I was like, not anyone could just go say, hey, I want to go fly birds. So, all right.
No, then you got selected, and I said, okay, go ahead and do it. So then I
so there's some serious vetting, but yeah, you know. So again, going back to like the like the mental game, they're of the mental game, the mental nature of this. There's nothing gamey about it, but there are similarities in terms of like performance and how you perform under duress, right? And it comes and you're saying a few things that I'm hearing. You're probably saying more than I'm not even catching, which is, but that the training took over. And the whole reason I was explaining to you before we even started today, that the whole reason I've been doing this Tough Talks thing is because we don't have formal training like you had, right? And all these contingencies. In the service, you had training, and Secret Service too. I'm sure I'd love to hear some stories about training there too.
Oh, I got stories for you.
Okay, so let's hear some, because it's all about. So the reason that you're able to, though, as people are listening to your stories, you're emphasizing the story and some humor in it. I'm working my butt off over here, making sure that you're not so slick. You're just being humble and letting like the value slip by everybody, because you're humble and you're funny. But it's important for people to hear, when they walk away from this episode with Major Al Zygowicz, what are they going to be able to go do different? And one thing is ask themselves, like, well, how am I training my mind? How am I, how am I using possibility, contingencies, preparing myself, to respond with grace, with discipline in the future, mentally, right? Being committed to getting the job done. And I love that. To me, that it's reminding me about the state of being all in, infinitely committed to something. And when you are, you don't have time to think about what could go wrong. Like, what could go wrong is not, and I'm not speaking for you, I'm speaking in my studies of human peak performance. I didn't serve, I've never been in a war and like having my life threatened. So I cannot relate to that. So I won't speak for you on that. But in terms of mental toughness, what I'm being reminded of is that when I'm infinitely committed to something, there's a job to get done, and that's all that's in my field of consciousness. I'm hearing you say that. And also the other thing is your passion for flying, which might have really been a hell of an asset for you. That you were doing something you loved, even though you were doing it in a set of circumstances that was horrific and scary as shit. You still had a passion for flying.
Right.
And I bet a lot of people's lives were well served because of your passion.
Well, as I say, life's a gamble, and I love to fly. I knew it's a gamble flying, but you know what? I wanted to do it. I'll take the chance, and that's just the way it is. I just wanted to do it.
So what kind of training? So I'll remind people. I mentioned it in the intro that you were also in the Secret Service, right? From 70s for a while, for quite a while.
25 years.
Yeah, right. So what kind of training? Now that had to be hard to get into.
Well, yeah, you know what, it was. So I applied for the Secret Service when I was in Pensacola, and the reason I got out of the Marine Corps, I wouldn't have got out of the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps. You got a minute?
we got plenty of minutes, man.
So
the good news about these podcasts and all this shit is people can press pause and come back later. So you can go on as long as you damn please.
So I'm in Pensacola and I'm flying Hueys. Beautiful little bird, Lima Model Hueys. You want to see one?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Of course he has one. This is Al Zygowicz, everyone. I'm so happy to be able to share. Oh wow, look at that. Check that shit out.
This is exactly how they were painted in Pensacola, the trainers.
These are great. You must love having them. Where did you get these things?
Oh, another story. Let me
No
tell
way.
you.
No way.
But that's another story.
Okay.
I got a whole bunch of them here in my office.
Oh, neat.
I got them in the PI when I was in the Secret Service. I go to this guy's house. He had these models all over the house. He makes you anything you want. So, back to my story. Yeah. So I'm in Pensacola flying those, having a good time with students who now the shoe's on the other foot. So student is now trying to kill Captain Zygo instead of Zygo trying to kill
I see. Yeah. Okay. Right.
I have some funny stories about that too.
I'm sure you do.
So, but anyhow, here's what happened. So I'm flying in Pensacola, and I get orders, and the orders say, "Ye shall now go to Corpus Christi, Texas, and thou shalt transition into jets. Oh,
I'm sorry, what? Into what?
Jets.
Jets. Wow.
Jets. Jets. So
Yeah.
I'm going to jet transition in Corpus Christi, Florida. Woohoo! Perfect. So anyhow, 2 weeks later, I get orders. I was a reserve guy, you know, and I wasn't a reggie. There's a difference. A regular guy who's, you know, in forever, and a reserve guy who's got a certain commitment. All right. I was a reserve guy, ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps. So I had a reserve commission, which means I had an end of active service date, EAS, and it was coming up to my EAS. So I get another set of orders, and it said, you were ordered home. And that means that you are going to be, you know, disconnected from the Marine Corps and become a civilian. I said, so I called up Washington. I said, hey, you don't understand. I got orders to go to jet transition. And they say to me, no, you don't understand. You don't need any more pilots. The war is over. You know, this is like 1975. The war is over. Remember the tanks went in and they won? We don't need any more pilots. We got enough pilots. And besides, you are a reserve guy. So saya damn nara. So I said, oh shit. So then.
Were you heartbroken?
Hell yeah, I was going to go fly jets at Corpus.
Yeah, right.
So anyhow, I started looking for jobs, and I applied for the Secret Service because my dad was a police officer and been around cops all my life. I thought, you know what, that might be fun. And applied to ATF and FBI.
Your dad was in Chicago?
Yeah, I was a Chicago police officer, 25 years. Yeah, God rest his soul. And so anyhow, I go to Mobile for the interview. I took the test. I passed the test, which was hard, by the way. And so I passed a mental test and, you know, adding, subtracting, and all that shit. So I passed that, and then lo and behold, I get an interview, and because I had applied, I get an interview in Mobile. So I go there and I interview with the boss. And I remember I had this interview, and I come out of the interview and I'm saying, you know what, I ain't going to get hired for this job. Ain't no way I can get hired for this job. Because
Why were you like that?
Because he told me, oh, only one in like so many gazillion guys get hired and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I get it. So then, you know, I had passed the TEA, Treasury Agent Report. I had passed the exam, so they saw that. So then, lo and behold, I get a call. Come back in after I had this interview. Come back in, and we're going to start your background. Start my background. Oh, okay. So I go in, they take my fingerprints, and the background is called a single scope background investigation, where they go and talk to everybody that ever knew you, and you know, because you got to get a top secret clearance. So before they will hire you. So it's about a year, and
it takes a year.
Yeah, it took a year. Government workers were doing this, you know what I mean? Doing the background investigation. You know how they are. Okay. So anyhow, I get a call from the ATF, and the ATF says, hey, you got a job, go to Podunk and, you know, start. I said, okay, cool, I'll do ATF. The next day, I get a call from the Secret Service, and the Secret Service says, guess what, you're hired, and go to Atlanta as your first office. So I went with the Secret Service, and I went from Pensacola to Atlanta, Georgia, and that was my first office. I did 5 years there. And then after that, I went to the protective detail, where I was with Bush 41 when he was the vice president, and I did like 5.5 years with him. And then went out to...
That had to be amazing.
You know, he was great. We loved him. He was great. The family was dynamite. The missus was wonderful. I had a good time with him. And
did you get to know them well?
Yeah, well, you get to know them, but you don't get to know them well. I probably was more familiar with her than with him, Mrs. Bush, because we had some issues with the times together. I can tell you about that. But so anyhow, did that with him. He was, as I say, he was a marvelous, marvelous person. The U.S. government, the U.S. taxpayer, got their money's worth out of this guy, because he would work. If you're working day shift, you work 3 shifts, days 4 to 12 minutes. switched every 2 weeks. And if you were working days, the wheels would be rolling on the cars at like 7:30 a.m. every day. So we had to push early. We had to push like at 6. So that changed our hours. So then he'd work. The 4 to 12ers would pick him up at the White House, and then they would work, till 12 o'clock at night. The midnighters would pick him. But then, if you're a 4 to 12er, all you wanted to do was go back to the CP, which is at the Naval Observatory, relax and work out, because we have a big gym there. So no, you didn't do that, because he'd have some evening event that he had to go to. So you had to go to some evening event. And then he traveled. I filled up like 2 or 3 passport books with this guy. We were traveling all around the world. So
interesting question. I know this might sound naive, but I'm sure some people are like, this is stuff that most people don't really think about. So you as a Secret Service man for the vice president,
right?
You need to go through customs and get a stamp on your passport.
Oh, they have, yeah. So what happened when you traveled with him? You had you had a diplomatic passport. So we would fly into a country, and they say, "Okay, give me your passport." So they would take our passports and they would put them and they would give them to somebody, and that somebody would go and get all the crap you had to do with stamps and bullshit, with passport bullshit. And then after the whole trip was over and you went back home, they would say, "Okay, here's everybody's passport," and they would give you your passport.
Oh, wow, okay. Oh, well, so you never even held on to your own passport?
Oh no, we didn't go through customs or any of that crap. No.
Right. What would you say are some of the things that when you were in the Secret Service, were you most afraid of?
You know what you were afraid of? Screwing up.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was the same when I was flying in the Marine Corps. You were afraid of screwing up. You had to do everything right, because I'm the guys I flew with and the guys in the Secret Service were the same guy. The only difference is the Secret Service guys didn't fly, but they were all the same person, and they were very intelligent. They were all overachievers. And you want to talk about mental toughness. These guys had more mental toughness in their little finger than I had in my whole body. I mean, these guys were unbelievable human beings. So when you went out and you had to do a job, you had to do a protective job, you had to do an undercover job or work a nutcase, you didn't want to screw up. I mean, that was the big thing, that you wanted to be considered a good agent. And everybody wanted to be considered a good agent because you were judged by your peers, I mean, if you were a knucklehead, you would damn well know that you were a knucklehead and you screwed up. Like when I was in the military, if you screwed up, they would give you the Fork U Award. And what's the Fork U Award? They would take a plastic fork and they would break off the teeth until you had one, standing in the middle, and you had to wear that in your flight school.
Shame.
You had to wear that in
Shame.
So you know that you're a.
This is like a dunce cap.
Yeah.
Right? Hi, I'm the idiot. How are you doing?
It was the same thing in Secret Service. You didn't want to.
Let me ask you about that. You said these guys, and I know you're humble as hell, but you're saying these guys all had so much mental toughness. Why do you think that is? Like, where did their mental toughness come from?
Shit, I don't know. I mean, we had some outstanding guys there.
So, do you just think that like some people are just are born with it for some reason?
I don't know. As they say, these guys out.
Well, I mean, you spent a lot of time with these people. Like, you probably got to know a little bit about your comrades.
Oh, my whole life. I mean, that's the kind of people I spent on. And I'm honored. I'm honored to have flown with these Marines, to have flown with these Army pilots who are outstanding human beings, and to have served with these Secret Service guys who are outstanding human beings. And I'm just honored to have actually worked with them and call them to this day friends.
That's so great. Well, this has been fun as hell, man, as I knew it would be. I would love it if there was a device that we could hook you up to that would just tell us exactly how many great stories you actually possess. I'd love to know that number. It's probably approximating infinite.
I got a bunch more, and a lot of them are pretty funny. Pretty funny.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I love most about you is that you take these stories, and every one of these stories you could tell them in a completely different light, which would have it be like tragic, right? Or at least like really scary, but you bring levity to it. And I appreciate that about you. And thanks for sharing these stories. I hope, I'm pretty sure, I'm certain that the folks that have had the ability to, or the opportunity to listen and or watch here have taken away not just some entertaining stories, but some inspiration, from you and your persistent, your perpetual commitment, not just to service, but also to excellence. And I really appreciate that about you, man.
Oh, thank you for the compliment. Appreciate you.
Well, and I also appreciate the fact that you have hosted me 16 times in Hawaii. So thanks for that too. By the way,
Well,
you know what's really interesting, and I'll explain this more when we hang up. But just minutes ago, one of the first times that I stayed at your place, I was out there because I was doing a mental toughness training series of workshops for the Hawaii State Junior Golf Association. On one of those trips, this weird thing happened. I was at Kinko's in downtown Honolulu, making copies of my handouts for these seminars, right, for workshops, and I'm paying for them. And the woman standing next to me at the counter when I'm paying for them is kind of just looking at them, and it says mental toughness training, and she was interested by that because she ran corporate events over at the Molokai Ranch.
Oh, okay.
And she and I got to talking, and she said, "Hey, I run corporate programs over at the Molokai Ranch. We're looking to develop our corporate. Do you do corporate trainings?" And I hadn't. I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do." And she said, "Well, why don't you come be my guest at Molokai Ranch for the weekend when you're done with all for the week here, and go check it out, see if it's complimentary on me." I thought, this is amazing. So I did. So I went over when I was done all my workshops. I went over there for a couple of days, and she put me up for free, and it was great. One of the things I did was I took a kayaking. There's not a lot to do over there, as you can imagine. It was unbelievable. It's a different story. It was like going from driving from your house in Hawaii Kai to the airport in Honolulu every morning, then flying out and doing some private sessions and then doing a workshop and then flying back, going to Duke's and Waikiki and then going back to your house, sleeping for 3 hours, getting up and doing it again, is a hectic, cool, but hectic week. So that's like 100 miles an hour for me. Then I go over to Molokai and there's nothing happening. But anyway, it was an abrupt halt, and it's a different story about getting comfortable with stillness, separate topic entirely. But one of the things I did when I was there was I took a kayaking tour. And the woman who was giving the kayaking tour, she and I got to talking, and she was all into psychology. She and I, this is like almost 20 years ago, just reconnected today.
Wow. Today,
a couple hours ago, and had a 90-minute talk about what she's doing with her life. She's becoming a coach. So she's starting her coaching practice from the island of Molokai, which is fascinating because there's not a whole lot going on there.
Wow.
But anyway, that's another connection that I have to thank you for. So
never been to Molokai.
It's pretty quiet. So anyway, I want to thank you again, man. Thanks for making time. Thanks for sharing your stories. Thanks for bringing so much, levity into such important stories. And thanks for who you are, man.
Roger that. Thank you.
I called it. I called it, right? I said, this is going to be a great story hour. And we may have some work to do, you and I, right? As the audience, in addition to being entertained by his fascinating stories that he brings humor into, which I think is incredible because those could also be completely articulated as like tragic or horrific stories. That's one of the things I love about him. I said at the end there is that he brings levity into everything, and it's really refreshing. But I'll tell you a couple of takeaways that I had listening to him, and I think I pointed them out. One was when he said, "Hey, man, the training just took over." That's when the training took over, right? When he's getting shot at. And I think I asked him, "How come you didn't panic?" And he goes, "That's when the training took over." And it was very obvious to him. He didn't have to reflect on that. It was like, "How come you didn't panic?" Because the training, man. Because we're training. And I had to dig a little bit, right? But I wanted to because that's like critical is the training, and I do mental toughness training. And a lot of times people freak out when they're trying to get something done or get what they want because they haven't had the training. We didn't have any classes. That's why Tough Talks exist in the damn first place, right? So the training, right? It's important for us to do the training, to do the mental training, so that when we're in a situation, even if we have the physical or mechanical talents, we need the fortitude, the mental fortitude, right? We need to rely on the training so that we don't go into the panic state and start shifting into fear. That was another thing that he mentioned, which is, I asked him, how come you didn't panic? And he said, like, well, I had a job to do. And right, he said it like really very, very, not casually, but very, like, it's basic, man. I had a job to do. Well, if I wanted to be a little bit more devil's advocate-ish with him, I would have said, yeah, but you could have paid attention. Like, you could have paid attention to the fact that you're also about to get your face shot off. But I love his answer because it reminds me of the all-in state, right? And when we are infinitely committed to something, we're all in. The possibility of failure is non-existent in our field of consciousness. We're too busy getting the job done. I think that's fantastic. And I also loved when he said, "Hey, man, you know what? The bottom line is, even those were scary circumstances. The truth is, I love to fly." And that's I think that's actually quite beautiful. Is resting into your passion even when you're in a state of adversity or a set of circumstances that could be easily interpreted as tremendously adverse. So I hope you enjoyed the story hour. I hope you got some value out of it. As always, please, if you're not receiving my Tough Talks updates or getting my daily dose, this is the daily dose. This is the book of the first 365 daily doses, which are the mental toughness tips delivered to your email box in 30 seconds or less. It takes to read them every morning, 6 a.m. your time, provided you sign up where you are, where you live, and you can get on both of those lists: the Tough Talks blog posts, as well Tough Talks podcast interviews, as well as my blog posts, which come out twice a week. And in addition, there's a separate list for the daily dose. Right, and you can get on both of them at one spot, which is christopherdoris.com/lists, LISTS. Put your name and your email in, one click, and there you go. You get the goodies. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, great miracles.